Anybody know how much we spend on higher education in Oregon?
Very little.
Yeah, some of you are in school maybe. We're spending the state budget for higher education is $781 million. So we're one of several states in the country where we're spending more to lock people up every year than we're spending on education. It costs $77.78 a day to keep somebody behind bars in Oregon, which is like over $28,000 a year, which I think could pretty much pay for somebody's public school tuition, room, and board for a year. And instead, as a state, we are making choices to put it into these bricks and mortar prisons, which, by the way, do not have any like substantial higher education programs in them. There are some GED programs and some volunteer opportunities where different groups are going into the prison and doing some college education type programs, but it's very small. So that's a choice that was made in the last budget cycle, and at the same.
Are there no longer any work programs in the prisons?
I'm going to let Tara get into that because she's going to talk about Measure 17 and work and prison labor in Oregon. So that's a good question. And so at the same time that basically the Health and Human Services budget, which funds our drug and alcohol addiction programs, our mental health programs, it stayed relatively the same that it did in 2007, but because we're in this economic crisis, the need for those services goes up. So keeping them at the same level that they were 2 years ago is not meeting the need for people who may be addicted to drugs and alcohol, whose illness may be manifesting because maybe they lost their insurance, right? Lost your job, lost your insurance, and unfortunately, too many of our people in prison have mental illnesses, and that's where a lot of people with illness end up. So I don't want it to go too much further in that direction, but just to say that decisions have to be made. When you have a limited pool of tax money, you have to decide where to put it. And if you continue to build prisons and incarcerate more and more people, that's where states put it, because once you build a prison, you fill it, and then you have to staff it. And that represents a trade-off with the things that could actually prevent crime and violence in the first place. After-school programs, drug and alcohol treatment in the community. There's a myriad of programs that have been shown to prevent crime and make safer communities and make healthier communities, because it's healthier to educate kids than to lock them up, right? So then you cannot separate, as I said before, race and incarceration in this country. So in Oregon, it kind of mirrors the rest of the country, even though we're an incredibly white state. The census says we're something like 90% white, and 74% of our prison population is white. 10% of our prison population is African American, and African Americans represent 2% of the state population. So we over-incarcerate African Americans in Oregon, which is, like I say, is a trend that happens across the country. And so, you might be saying, well, why is that? I just, in the last, I think, 3 or 4 minutes I have, mentioned the word institutional racism. Have people heard of that? I think at a conference where we talk about the economic crisis and the environmental crisis, it's something that really has to be brought up and discussed. Institutional racism means that the institutions of our state, of our system, that were built and developed with white supremacist orientations function in very racist ways. So in the criminal justice system, you have racial profiling, deciding who gets arrested. You have prosecutors making decisions about who gets prosecuted, courts, in the prison population. Then it goes to how people interact with parole officers and that whole system of post-prison work. So it functions in the laws, in the crack cocaine disparity, and the application of the 500 to 100 grams of crack cocaine, right? It's the same penalty as 500 grams of powder cocaine, which is an example of how racism in writing laws happens. And then in other areas that are connected to the conference, redlining and urban renewal, the subprime mortgage crisis, federal policy towards indigenous people, zoning, and environmental racism. I mean, these are all places where white supremacy in the United States intersects with systems and state structures that affect people's lives. And so to wrap this up, because this was also a conference about the environmental crisis, I wanted to sort of throw out some ideas about where prisons and the environmental crisis intersect. And I think it's not something we think about very often, but I live with an environmental engineer, so we talk about it a little bit. So first, which has been already spoken about, I think at this conference, is state repression. People who are involved in different aspects of the environmental movement have found themselves incarcerated for much longer than people who might be convicted of similar things who were not in any way an activist or active in any way. So one way that prisons have always functioned are as tools of state repression. The second is greenwashing. Since part of my job is to follow prisons very closely, I've noticed that the LEADS program is certifying prisons as green buildings, which I think is it's more of the depressing evidence that the environmentalist movement has been sort of disconnected from social justice in a lot of ways. And when environmentalism disconnects from social justice, you get things like green prisons. Prisons pollute. In Oregon, the DEQ just fined the Department of Corrections for dumping chemicals at a prison, and the state penitentiary in Salem has polluted the groundwater underneath it with laundry chemicals. So they are things that function without a lot of oversight and cause pollution. And then prison siting in Oregon, when we had to build a lot of prisons for reasons that Tara's going to talk about, the governor authorized an emergency siting law that overrode any environmental impact requirements to build prisons. Basically, if you wanted a prison, you could have one, dam, whatever environmental issue might be present. And we have a prison in a high desert community called Lakeview, and the prison has first dibs on the water, not the city. So a deal was made so that in any kind of dry year, water crisis, whatever, the prison gets the water first. And then finally, just to close with a little bit of hope and bring up some things that I think are positive connections with environmentalism and prison issues. There's a group in Oakland, there's actually 2 organizations co-founded by the same person. Is the name Van Jones recognizable? Anybody?
Yeah.
He was recently the Green Job Czar who was run out of the government, which was really depressing, but he is a co-founder of an organization called Elevator Center for Human Rights and a group called Green for All. And his idea is we can solve the economic crisis and the environmental crisis by job training and investment in communities that have been historically ignored or harmed by racism in capitalism. And part of his idea is training people who are coming out of prison to do jobs that are connected to green building and greening their own communities and rebuilding neighborhoods, basically. And so I encourage people to check out Elevator Center for Human Rights and Green for All. And I've left some of my organization's information in the back, and also an essay that was really important to me called Where Was the Color in Seattle? Because I know Seattle is coming up a lot, 10-year anniversary, and I think it's important to reflect on how the role that racism played in organizing that, and to think about that as other people are talking about these activities. I hope I didn't go too